life comes back to a full circle. If you really look at Netflix, the way Netflix started was they were the largest content aggregators. Right? There are too many people creating content and stuff like that. Let's aggregate the content. That was their value proposition. Now Netflix is the largest content creator. Right? They started with aggregating. Now they became the largest content creator. So there are very few people who are interested in investing in India because the majority of the investors would think India as a country itself is risky. And whatever little capital that would come to India, right, it would get split between Ola and us. So we always knew that either Ola will acquire us or we will acquire Ola. An auto loan for the local American is at 10% down payment and 6% interest rate. For a new immigrant, it is 45% down payment and 21% interest rate.
Seriously. Hey there, folks. I'm Edil Patel, co-founder and CEO of Mudrex. Welcome to the show. Today we've got Raghu with us. Raghu was the founder of TaxiForSure and now is the founder of Zolve. But instead of me butchering his intro, I would rather have Raghu tell us a bit about himself. So, Raghu, welcome to the show. Would love to know more about you and spend some time today decoding a bunch of things that you've been working on. Let's start with history as much as you want to. So yes, please. It would be great if you can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Zolve. Thanks for having me here. So typical Indian middle class background. Engineer, worked for a couple of years, then MBA. Post that worked as a consultant. And for some strange reason, started TaxiForSure, right? So we started TaxiForSure in 2010, right? I think then startup ecosystem in India is extremely niche, right? And people didn't know what startup was, and very very few people had gotten exits. So nobody knew that there's an exit at the end of,
as a concept exists,
right? And nobody. So the only other people that we could look up to was Sanjeev Vikchandane of Naukri and Deep Kalra of Make Metro, right? So and they were pretty senior to us.
Correct.
But we thought that we had an interesting idea and we just wanted to give ourselves a couple of years to try it out. So ran the company for about 3.5 to 4 years, sold the company. Post that, I've been actively angel investing in a whole lot of startups. And so 2021 started a cross-border neobank called Zolve. So that's what I've been doing. On the personal front, used to play cricket and football at a professional level. Once you graduate, it's very difficult to find 20 plus people to play a game. Right? So then started.
So when you say professional, what level was this like?
So Division 4, Division 3 level here. And started doing marathons, right? And so I've done quite a few marathons. And post the TaxiForSure exit, started focusing on triathlons also. Didn't know how to swim, so learned swimming. So started doing triathlons, took part in a few Ironman events. And so last year climbed the Kilimanjaro also.
Oh my God!
So just pushing the boundaries here and there.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll go a lot deeper into the regime as well, and we'll talk about all of that. But let's actually start off with TaxiForSure, right? This was, just to give everyone context, it was 2010. I believe Uber had just started off in the US back then. Was a thought that you want to create a ride-hailing company, or was a thought that it will be an intercity company or something like that? How did TaxiForSure start? And
so interesting. I think some background there. I think I used to be a consultant. As part of consultants, right? So we would probably get the latest mobile phones.
Yeah.
Right. And I think February 2010 is when the geolocation sensor made to the smartphone.
Yeah.
Right, so tracking people became a lot more easy. Communicating with them became a lot more easy. Somewhere in August 2010, me and my co-founder, we were just chatting. And we were not chatting, we were drinking and we were cribbing about our professional life. And,
like all consultants do. Like all consultants.
Oh, he was a business development guy and stuff like that, right? And after a few beers down, right, we started cribbing, right? So that's a favorite pastime.
Yeah.
And when we were cribbing, it so happened that we had a common crib that whenever we need to find a taxi, right? We couldn't get one because the call center then were busy and stuff like that. But we could see so many free cars, taxis on the road.
Correct.
And then we're like, why can't just people provide a channel for people to communicate with free taxi drivers?
Which city were you in back then?
I was in Delhi. My co-founder was in Hyderabad, but both of us were from Bangalore.
Okay.
So this conversation happened in Museum Inn, right, on Church Street.
Yeah.
So we were having that conversation. At the end of it, right, so thankfully there was a tissue paper and we wrote it down. The next day morning when we woke up, we thought that we had a great idea, but we didn't know what it was. right? Thankfully, we found the tissue paper, so
Yeah, the
through
napkin.
which we figured, oh, this is a great. So that's how we started. So I think all of us started more or less at the same time because all of us were working on the tech had changed.
Correct.
Right. Earlier, some of the taxi companies used to install 80,000 rupees, 2010, right? 80,000 rupees worth of GPS devices just to
Correct.
track, and these GPS devices couldn't communicate. Now, because of the smartphones, right, 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees, one is to find the location of the, but you can
Correct.
communicate as well. So the tech started making all that happen, right? And when we did the research also, right? So the way we went about doing it was first we did a online survey, shared it with all our friends, but we felt that the responses were obviously great. We felt that it's skewed because most of our friends were B-school guys,
Correct.
consultants who travel a lot and stuff like that, which is a very, very niche market,
Yeah, not
right?
everyone does that.
So then in that case, then probably building a company only for the niche market doesn't really make sense, right? So then what we did was we didn't know how to find other people,
Yeah.
right? And during that time, 2010 and 2011, right, majority of our taxi usage used to happen to the airport, to the
Yeah.
railway stations, and to the bus stands and
Correct.
stuff like that, right? We stood in front of the airport, spoke to people coming in and getting out of the, right? So all of them used to feel that finding a cab was difficult. For a 6 a.m. flight, pickup would be at 4 a.m. in the morning for these people. People would book 4 or 5 cabs so that they're not sure that a cab will come.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and it's a pain for the drivers also. It's a pain for the customer also.
Yeah.
Right. So then we thought, oh, everybody's facing the same problem. Oh, then there is some merit in doing this. But we thought that this must be skewed towards people who are frequent flyers. Again, not really a big market.
Correct.
Right. So then what we did was by this time we had a good questionnaire of around 15 questions, 12 questions which were like objective type, around 3 questions where people had to think and answer. We hired a bunch of college kids and asked them to stand in front of malls, speak to people over
Yeah.
there, right? So we got around close to 20,000, 2,900
Responses.
responses, right? 92% of the people felt that they have a problem in booking a cab. Then we thought that, oh, this is amazing. And we met in person those 30 people who had taken time out to answer those 3 questions.
Yeah. The
Right,
long form questions.
long form questions. And when we saw the spark in their eyes, when we shared the solution, no, that's when we thought that we are onto something interesting.
Yeah.
That's when we resigned from our jobs.
Got it. So, like a lot of user research before this.
Oh, well, I don't know
It's
whether
surprising, but actually, it seems like a lot of people don't do this anymore.
no, without doing this. So one is, I think, because of our consulting background,
Yeah.
right? But mostly, right, without doing research, right, it's very difficult to really run with that, right? But I think the most important contribution for the whole beginning of the TaxiForSure journey was some of my very good friends who were extremely, what do you call, skeptical. They're like, Raghu, ये तो नहीं चलेगा यार, right? How
Yeah.
can, well, a lot of people are running taxi industry, they can't come up with this idea, right? Right? How can you come up with something better that they haven't thought about, right? So then you're like, okay, why haven't they thought about and stuff like that, right? The kind of questions those people used to ask, right? So they were so pessimistic, right? But smart people who are pessimistic, right? It's a deadly combination because they can ask the right questions through their pessimism.
Correct.
Right, and we started finding answers to those questions because those questions had merit, and we had gone on the journey for such a long way that when we started talking to investors, none of the investors asked the kind of challenging questions that my friends had asked.
Correct.
So it was a smooth cakewalk for me. So earlier I would be pained by these guys.
Yeah.
Right, then I realized that it's better to have these pessimistic, good friends, smart friends,
Correct.
so that they push you to your thought process to such an extent that it's
That
significantly
you're almost
important.
forced to get to the answer, right?
Yes,
Like,
yes,
it
yes.
was always-
Otherwise, it's and but there also, despite that, also we made a lot of mistakes. Right, we always felt that we also use taxis. We are also customers.
Correct.
Right, and whatever, and instead of doing once we went live, once we started taking the product to the market and stuff like that, right, we would not talk to customers. We were like, we also use taxis, we are also customers, and we also understand if we feel that it's a pain point, everybody else also faces a pain point, right? We wasted good 6 months doing so, because the moment you start understanding the driver behavior, the driver side of the story and stuff like that, you cease to become the customer. Because majority of the customers have most of the customers may at max may have a chat with the driver.
Correct.
In the car, right? They just don't dwell into, right, what is the
person is going through.
livelihood, right, who's there in the family and stuff like that. The moment you get involved in those things, no, you cease to become the customer.
Correct.
right? So then what you think and what the real customer thinks are very, very different.
Yeah.
So then what you need to build your product for the real customer, not for yourself, even though you avail the same service.
Correct.
So it took us some amount of time to really get there. Once we got there, we stopped considering ourselves as customers, right? And we started focusing on right, having focus group discussions with our customers, taking the feedback and start implementing those things.
Got it. So TaxiForSure was from 2010 to 2015, right? And at that point, you got acquired by Ola, and it was one of the largest exits in the ecosystem, right? So what was that? How was that thought process? Why go for the acquisition? What happened? Did you choose to continue in the industry after that? Let's talk about that a bit more.
Oh, no, it was a very interesting journey, right? I think the whole industry transformed
Yeah.
completely, right? Before we started, the number of people who would take taxis were few, and the number of taxis that the people who regular taxi users would take is also fewer,
Correct.
right? What really happened in those 5 years was that the number of people taking taxis increased significantly,
Correct.
right? And the different use cases also increased significantly. So when we started Taxi for Sure, we started in Bangalore. The primary focus was people from the city going to the airport, people from the airport coming back to the city,
Yeah.
right? Because that was the use case, right? By the time 2 years, 3 years into the company, right, people started using taxis a lot more frequently within the city.
Correct.
A lot more different use cases. Maybe people would use taxis once or twice a week. Now people use it like 5-6 times a day. All right,
Yeah,
so things change dramatically. So, and because of it, there was a huge growth.
Why do you think
Extremely.
that happened? Why do you think this transition happened?
Right, one is I think earlier it was such a painful thing to book a taxi, right? It was not at all convenient.
Correct.
So there was a real need for people to
Correct.
really book a taxi. The real need is mostly a pre-planned one, not a sporadic one.
Only if they were willing to go through the pain, only if it was.
So it was always a pre-planned, right? Because hailing a taxi on the road, apart from Mumbai, right, where
Doesn't happen.
Kalipili exists, and maybe in Calcutta, right, the rest of the cities in India don't really have that hailing the taxi on the road.
Correct.
Right. So taxi booking was always a pre-planned activity.
Correct.
If it has to be a pre-planned activity, there should be a pre-planned purpose
Yeah.
to get there and things like that. Right. And for the pre-planned activity also, the booking was also so inconvenient because you had to call the call center during peak
Yeah.
hours. The call center is busy, so it was extremely inconvenient. Too much of friction. Right. One is I think because of the app and things like that, right, we reduced the friction significantly. Right, so then it became a lot more easier, and because there was availability of taxis whenever they were, and more than that, availability of customers in a close proximity of where the cab was.
Correct.
Earlier, because of the pre-booking, right, the cab had to travel 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers to the customer location, empty to the customer
Yeah.
location to pick up the customer. Now the cab doesn't even travel more than 500 meters or maximum a kilometer to pick up the customer.
Correct.
So because of which the what is called the dead run, where without you the car is running without the customer inside, right, that reduced significantly. Because of which the commercials for lowering the price worked out.
Basically, incentives changed for the drivers.
Earlier, the cab would be on the road for 200 kilometers, but with the customer only for 80 kilometers.
Oh.
Right. With people like us, the cab would continue to run for 200 kilometers in a day, but we would have customers for 160 to 170 kilometers.
Correct.
So because of which you can see the driver is more concerned with what is my take home every day.
Correct.
Right. With the customer 80 kilometers, I need to make so much extra amount of rupees.
Correct.
With the customer at 160, 170 kilometers also, my take home is more or less similar only. Right. Because of which you can slash the prices.
Yeah.
Right. If you slash prices, economics 101, as the price you slash, the demand increases significantly. Right, more the demand, cabs get more customers.
Correct.
In the closest proximity. So it just
That cycle
flywheel,
just
the flywheel
continues.
just we kickstarted the flywheel and things change dramatically.
So 2015 and after that, as we stand right now, it's mostly Ola and Uber who are trying to scale this up. But now we've started to see that a lot of these other niche use cases have started to emerge once again, right? Like there are the Blue Smarts and the Quick Rides and the Volts of the world that are again looking at this same long distance routes only. That's what they typically tend to prefer. Do you think that where do you think this is all going? Because it doesn't seem like Ola and Uber are making any money or are in a direction where they will be end up making money. So where do you think this entire game is going as such?
So it's not an easy thing to really answer without understanding what Ola and Uber are really looking at the market and why are they letting some of these smaller guys to explore and things like that, right? I think right, there were always niches. Right, when we started when all three of us, Ola, Uber, TaxiForSure started, we were not the only three companies.
Yeah.
There were 10 different companies also, and this is also something that we need to really understand. It just happened by chance for us, right? Why only Ola, Uber, and TaxiForSure survived when the rest of the guys didn't survive. Right. So let's take the three categories of people. It's a marketplace. Right. In a marketplace, you have the customer side and you have the driver side, right? The supply and the demand side, right? So what happened was when we started the taxi for sure, right? The mobile penetration in India was low,
Yeah.
right? So what we did was, right, we did, instead of forcing the customer to come to the app, like, okay, you're comfortable calling and booking, you call and book.
Yeah.
We'll have a website also, an app also, but we'll not force you to move to the app.
Correct.
Right? We'll run a call center, you come. But on the driver side, what we did is, was, all right, so driver is also not comfortable using a mobile phone during that time, right?
Yeah.
So we'll insist that no, okay, we have technology, we'll train you. It will take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and stuff like that. We'll train you, but you need to use this, right? For the driver, right? So they are completely ignorant on what is the source of booking. Whether the booking came through the call center or through the website or through the app. For them, okay, this is the pickup time, this is the pickup location.
Correct.
You just go pick up the customer and drop them at this destination, right? So they were analog. So that's what we focused on. There are one set of companies who tell that was, we are a tech company, we are a tech first company, right? So we will not do call center. We will not do what the existing taxi guys are doing. We'll only do this thing. So we'll train the drivers also on the app. We'll force the customers also to come onto the app and stuff like that, right? So that's the call that they took, right? So what happened is, because the customers were forced to come onto the app and stuff like that, mobile penetration in India was so low that there was no scale.
Correct.
So because there was no scale, they were not able to get enough bookings. Right? The drivers also wouldn't really be in there, right? And because of which they were not able to raise capital. Also, they died very, very soon.
So it's like this getting to scale was really important early on.
Exactly, right. Then there were another set of companies, right, who told that mobile penetration in India is also low, internet penetration is low, data is super expensive, pata nahi kab hoga.
Correct.
Right. So what they did was, so we'll not invest in technology. Right, so let the customer also comes through calls. We'll also give the drivers also bookings through the calls only. So they were able to hit scale and stuff like that. But on the mobile penetration in India went through the roof. They were, even though they were getting so many customers, right, they were not able to give it to the drivers because everything was completely manual.
Correct.
Right, so for us it was manual on the customer side, but completely automated on the driver side. When the thing happened, all right, so the driver didn't really see any difference only.
Correct.
So they saw an increase in bookings wherever they are.
Correct.
So that's the reason we ended up surviving.
Yeah.
So why this is important is to really listen to how the market really works and stuff like that, right? That really happened. And what happened was, so Uber was there. There was Ola and Taxi for sure, and this was a time when we required a significant amount of investment in the business.
Correct.
To really grow the business, right? And so a few challenges there, right? Taxi driving is not really a chosen profession.
Correct.
Right, and people are most of the times it's the parents who fund the cab so that their son drives the car and stuff like that, right? And the parents are like, so every day you earn 1,500 rupees, you give 1,000 rupees to your parents, 500 rupees you keep.
Yeah.
Right. Earlier people had to be on the road for 14 hours to make 1,500 rupees.
Correct.
Thanks to us, people would get there in 4 hours.
Yeah.
Right. And our common understanding is, if you are asked to continue to do the same thing day on day, right, for the same number of hours, and if there is an opportunity for you to earn more money, the assumption that we have is people will
Earn more
do
money.
right, but that is not something that the taxi drivers would do. If you take 14 hours a day, 14 hours in a day to
Very
earn me
interesting.
1,500 rupees, and now I get the same 1,500 in 4 hours, why should I be on the road for another 10 additional
Very
10 hours?
interesting.
I'll go back home and sleep,
Yeah.
or I'll chill with my friends, because parents are interested in 1,500 rupees.
Yeah.
That's been done, and my life is settled, I'll go back. Right, so how do you create hunger amongst people who don't have the hunger?
Yeah.
Right, so that's where the incentives are all played out, so that the people continue to be on the platform for significantly longer time and things like that. All right, so that's how we started, and this involved a lot of money. Right, and at that time, and Uber was extremely well capitalized.
Of course.
Right, and it was Ola and Taxi for sure. All right, so there are very few people who are interested in investing in India, because majority of the investors would think India as a country itself is risky.
Correct.
Right, and whatever little capital that would come to India, right, it would get split between Ola and us. Right, and the capital being split, it's very difficult to take on an Uber.
Correct.
So we always knew that either Ola will acquire us or we will acquire Ola.
Correct.
It just so happened that right, whatever that happened during that time, right, whatever that happened with Uber in Delhi.
Correct.
So we were at the wrong place at the wrong time. We ended up
Correct.
at the wrong place at the wrong time. So then it made sense for us to really go ahead. So it was difficult then to go ahead and sell the company to the competition and stuff like that. But in hindsight, I think it was a great reason to do this, right? And once these companies started becoming larger and larger, they realized that right, they are just cannibalizing each other's
Correct.
market and stuff like that, right? So then we figured out how do we stable and run with it, right? And because of which, right, so competition reduced, and because the competition reduced, innovation also reduced between the two parties and stuff
Correct.
like that. Ola started probably focusing more on Ola Electric and other things, right? So innovation in the space started falling through, right? And when but there continues to be a lot of challenges, but the innovation of the two large cab aggregators have fallen down.
Yeah.
So that gives rise
To new players.
who are figuring out what are the niches in the market and stuff like that. Whether they would be successful or not, it's something that we need to do. And once if these people are able to show them an opportunity,
Correct.
right? I'm not really sure whether the Uber and the Olas will just let some third party come and if they can only jump into the opportunity.
Correct.
Right? Whether it's going to be bike taxis, whether it's going to be autos, whether it's going to be electric
Vehicles.
taxis and stuff like that, right? Or whether it's going to be carpooling, whether it's going to be something else and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So there are multiple niches that are possible. If somebody cracks it, probably other people can come and do
Correct.
it.
Especially because Ola and Uber do have the distribution might, right? Like they're already there, the brand name is there and so on and so forth. So it's always helps.
And so I think historically also, right, if you really look at the ecosystem, life comes back to a full circle. All right. And it's not just here, right? If you really look at Netflix, the way Netflix started was they were the largest content aggregators.
Correct.
Right? There are too many people creating content and stuff like that. Let's aggregate the content. That was their value proposition. Right? Now Netflix is the largest content creator.
Correct.
Right, they started with aggregating. Now they became the largest content creator, right? And if you look at Uber and Ola also, right, they were aggregating taxis, so they just wanted to avoid taxi ownership and stuff
Correct.
like that. Now these are the guys who own a whole large
Fleets of
right?
taxis.
So that's the reason people like Blue Smart and stuff like that with owning the cars are
Correct.
coming up, right? Even if you look at Swiggy also, right, Swiggy had started a whole lot of cloud kitchens. If COVID wouldn't have happened, Swiggy would have been the largest
Restaurant there. in the
right,
country.
largest kitchen.
Correct.
Right, restaurant may not be the right word.
Yeah.
Largest kitchen, right? The whole thing of them was to there are so many kitchens. Let's aggregate them,
Yeah.
not to become the thing, right? So there were a lot of brands that Swiggy only had started. People don't know whether it is Swiggy's brand or a.
Is this, by the way, typical, at least for B2C, where you start off first building distribution? Once you've built up distribution, you want to focus on building the product and the quality so that you increase margins? Is this a generalizable statement?
No, I'm not. I don't think so. What I'm trying to tell you is it's just that you keep talking to customers, you start figuring out opportunities and stuff like that. Then you start getting into that spaces, right? And it's not that doesn't really become the thing. If you really look at Big Bazaar, right? Big Bazaar also has their own personal brands.
Correct.
For everything that is possible.
Yeah.
But that's still not the largest.
Correct.
Right? Even Flipkart. Right, also has their own personal brands. Amazon has Amazon Basics.
Correct.
But that's still not the larger brands yet. But for Netflix,
Netflix is
it is the thing. It
Yeah.
is the big thing, right? Amount of licensing that they do for the movies and the TV shows, and amount of their own thing that they do, it's significantly larger.
Correct.
Right? So it's not that you only see Amazon Basics on Amazon.
Correct.
All right, and there are people who go through Amazon Basics, but there are few people who go with the brands and stuff like that, right? It's not necessarily that. It's just that the more you understand the customer preferences and things like that, right? You want to really give it to them what they have.
Correct.
All right, and at scale, can you get economics benefit? All right, so if Swiggy figures out that these many people in this locality prefer biryanis.
Yeah.
So instead of the biryani being built right across multiple restaurants, and when there's so much of demand coming in and these restaurants don't have enough capacity, so that they keep rejecting the order.
Yeah.
So then you have customers whom you have acquired, and these people have these preference, but the restaurant supply is not able to cope up with it. Then you don't have a choice but to do it.
Correct.
The Netflix also, right? People have taken subscription, but I don't have enough content to keep these people engaged.
Correct.
So what should I do, right? Instead of waiting for somebody else to create good quality content and stuff like that, when I know this customer requires crime thriller, this customer requires rom-com and stuff like that, but I'm not able to get enough crime thrillers, enough rom-coms and stuff like that, then I as well go there and get it done.
Exactly. So 2015 TFS and then 2021 Zolve, right? So we'll talk about this 6-year period in some time, but let's first move towards Zolve. Let's talk about what the problem was, and let's also talk about how did you get started thinking about a product like Zolve.
So there are multiple ways in which we arrived at Zolve, right? I think the probably one of the good ways to look at it is when we started TaxiForSure in 2010, right? The engineering costs in India was one fourth of the cost in the valley, and because of which building product was a lot more cheaper in India. Right, and the consumers had whatever money that they had to pay and stuff like that. In the last 10 years, what happened was the engineering cost, the product cost in India is kind of mirroring the cost in the valley.
Yeah. There is no more India arbitrage.
There's not more, right? The per capita income of our customers in India has moved from $1,800 to $2,400,
Yeah.
right? The cost quadrupled, right? The per capita income only grew by 33%.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to build a profitable consumer business in India with such high cost, with such low potential,
Correct.
how will you build a profitable business? Even though your customers love you and you have the monopoly in the market and stuff like that, right? You will never be able to do that because they don't have the money to pay you.
Correct. Because the costs are just too high.
Because the costs are so high. So how will you build a profitable business?
Correct.
Right, and you understand, I understand B2C business.
Yeah.
Right, and you want to start building something which you have a better understanding.
Correct.
If that's the case, then how will you build? Because the math doesn't work out.
Correct.
Right, so if you look at Indonesia per capita is $8,000. If you look at the US per capita is $65,000.
Correct.
Right, but you can't have their cost and have a very low per capita and still continue to be profitable.
Correct.
Right, and the media also wants profitable startups and stuff like that. Right?
Yeah.
It's extremely hard to build one. But when you're looking at this, right, so you think about the per capita means average, but there are lots of people who are way beyond the average.
Correct.
Correct. Who are those people? What are those challenges that those people are facing? Right. That's where we hit upon these migrants, right, who are probably the cream of the country, right, whose per capita is probably upwards of $80K dollars
Yeah.
or $90K dollars kinds. Right. What is it? Are they facing a problem? If they're facing a problem, is there a way for us to solve for it?
Got it.
That's right. So then you can easily take the cost, Indian cost, and build for that niche audience and solve for it. So that's one.
So building B2C second time over, was profitability this core thing in your head that you said that, okay, if I'm building something this time, you want to make sure that it has to be profitable from the get-go. Was that the thought process?
No, it's not about profitability and stuff like that. But when you hit scale and things like that, right, the business should make sense.
Like the economics should be there from day one, whether you're not able to. It's okay if you're not able to make money at
So
day
as I
one.
mentioned to you, right, so once you are engaging with the customer, right, so let's say for example Swiggy. All right, so we get food deliveries, then you do Swiggy Instacart, then you do the Swiggy Genie and stuff like that, right? You can get into multiple services for the same customer, but the customer has to have money to pay.
Correct.
If they don't have money to pay, you can't even get into other segments at all.
Correct.
Right? Because you, as you rightly mentioned, right, you crack the distribution. But if you have people who don't have money, access that to people
What will
who
you
don't
distribute
have,
them?
what will you distribute to them?
Correct.
Correct. So that's where the real thing is. It's not about trying to build a profitable business and stuff like that. Do you understand, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you're able to, so by virtue of this, it will become profitable.
Correct.
But profitability is not the pursuit.
Correct.
Right? You target people who have the money wherewithal to really pay for services and stuff like that.
Correct.
Right? And once you are able to get those guys, then you can do cross-sell, upsell. You can do a whole lot of things for them because they require a whole lot of services.
Got it. So, okay, then let's talk about this population, right? Like, give us a sense of what this migrant population looks like in the country.
See, India has been a net exporter of talent.
Yeah.
Right, so that's there. Whether it is going to be for education, either it's going to be for work and stuff like that. India has been a net exporter of talent because I think there are a lot of opportunities across the world than what it is in India. Right, partly because of the investments that we make into research and things like that. Partly because of the regulations that we have. Partly because of the commercials. Let's say I don't know how much does a PhD student get as an internship here, stipend in India compared to what probably a PhD student in abroad markets typically get, right? So there is a huge difference of it. Because of it, you're going forward also, there is more and more people looking out than looking in. right?
Yeah.
So that's always been the case, right? So whether people pursue opportunities, people pursue better lifestyle, people pursue better things for their kids and other things and stuff like that, right? So that's been the case, and it's been there for the last 20-30 years. At least the forward outlook is also significantly higher, right?
Correct.
So that's mostly from the India side. All right, but what has also happened, triggered this is migration laws in other countries have been relaxed significantly. For example, Canada now directly gives permanent residency to people from India to Canada
Correct.
immediately. The green card equivalent, right?
Correct.
Where a green card, where it takes around 15 to 20 years for the green card in the US to get processed. The similar equivalent thing in Canada called PR, people get it immediately. So
Got
more
it.
number of people. So 2018 is when the laws changed. And in the UK also, right? In 2019, the UK government changed the law, regulations. If you are a student who studies in the UK, right? Earlier they had to find a job within 2 minutes of the student visa getting expired.
Within 2 months.
Within 2 months, right? If you don't get a job, you will be deported back to the country.
Yeah.
Now they changed the 2 months to 2 years.
Okay. It's just
So
much easier.
So more number of people go,
Correct.
right, to study in the UK, and because it's 2 years, in 2 years they'll find a job and stuff like that, right? So they can migrate and things like that.
Correct.
So a lot of these countries are also changing their migration laws to favor migration, right? Indians want to go out,
Correct.
all right, and these guys want people to come in, so that has really accelerated the migration.
Correct. So this is a wave that you see is happening and it's going on, and that's why you wanted to pick migrants apart from the other things, right? But what's the size? How many people do from India migrate outside every year?
So close to 2 to 3 million
Two
people.
to 3 million. And is US the largest set?
Used to be. Now Canada, UK are larger than US.
Okay.
US is third.
Got it. So tell us a bit about Zolve. What does Zolve do for these migrants that are going to the US, UK, and Canada?
So what we do is, so whenever people migrate, right, so in a nutshell, right, so Zolve is a cross-border neobank. We help migrants get access to credit in the new country based on their home country credit score.
Got it.
Right. So the problem that we try to solve is whenever people migrate, because they don't have a local credit history in the new country, they end up being treated as high credit risk individuals.
Correct.
Right, and because of which access to credit is limited, whatever limited access to credit that they have are super expensive.
Yeah.
And in majority of the developed market, right, so having a good credit history is super important, right? Not just because of access to financial products. There is a lot of non-financial things also. Landlord in the US does a credit history check before they give the apartment for rent. In India, we don't do that.
Correct.
In the US, they do that, right? So the thought there is, if you have a good credit history, that means that you are paying your monthly installments on time.
Yeah.
Then there is a high probability that you'll pay the rent on time.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't have a good credit history, so probably you'll not pay my rent also on time.
Yeah.
So why should I give my apartment for you?
Correct.
So majority of the landlords don't touch people with no credit history or bad credit history.
Correct.
Right. For the people who are okay to deal with this, right, instead of asking, the norm in the US is 1 month rent is the lease deposit.
Yeah.
Right. So what these people ask is for is 6 months rent as lease deposit.
Correct.
Right.
So if you've got a poor credit history, you just have much higher case cost.
Right, and if you and US is a country where you need to buy a car. Without a
Yeah.
car, it's very difficult to commute and stuff like
Yeah.
that, right? An auto loan for the local American is at 10% down payment and 6% interest rate. For a new immigrant, it is 45% down payment and 21% interest
Insane.
rate.
Yeah, that's insane.
Oh, it is super expensive, and and the thing is, majority of these people have got a great credit history in their home country,
Yeah.
right? Just because the banks in the US don't talk to the banks in India,
Yeah.
right, there is an arbitrage where a low risk individual ends up being treated as high risk.
Correct.
And for no fault of theirs. And it's not just the India to the US problem and stuff like that, right? Somebody who's in US going to Canada also, or somebody in Canada coming to the US also, they also face the same problem,
Correct.
right? And for no fault of theirs. So, and these days globalization is happening, right? People have become employees of global workforce, right? People keep migrating and stuff like that, right? But everywhere they go, it's a challenge. And it's not that the two countries don't talk to each other. The education degrees in India are valid in the US. If you're an engineer here, you're an engineer there.
Correct.
If you're an MBA here, you're an MBA there.
Correct.
Right? If you're an economics here, you're an economics there and stuff like that. That is valid.
Correct.
Right? But the credit history is not. All right. And not just that, right? If you have a driving license in India, you can rent a car in the US
Yeah.
or in Canada or in Europe.
Yeah, you can
Right?
use the same driving
Right.
license.
So you don't have to clear a driving test for you to do that. So Indian documents are valid, but not the credit history.
Got it.
So there's this, and people go through a whole lot of pain for them to really get a stable life.
Yeah.
Right. So only the immigrants understand this, and they struggle for the first 3 to 4 years in the new country, right? And the way they deal with this, they ask their manager to become a co-signer for the
Okay.
house lease. Right, they ask the manager to share their credit card so that they can start building it.
Correct.
Right, so somebody else will take the car in their name and give it to them. Right, so
Correct.
in India we don't do all that. We don't
Yeah.
ask our bosses to right be a co-signer for the apartment. The bosses even don't know where do
Yeah.
we live and stuff like that. Forget asking becoming the co-signer. So it's so that's how the market used to be. And after we got in, we have changed things significantly there.
So Raghu, yeah, with Taxi for Sure, you had that journey of figuring out what was the problem and getting started over there. What was the journey for Zolve? How did you get inspired to build this off? And I understand the market, etc., but what was the spark
So
that
that's
led
what.
you there?
So doing post the TaxiForSure exit, right? I was investing in doing a lot of angel investment, and I had this insight, right, where Indian startup ecosystem is maybe a year and a half behind the Chinese ecosystem and the US startup ecosystem. So what I started doing is travel to China and US regularly. Right, to understand what kind of startups that they're investing in, right, and what is the thesis behind that, and why those things, right, and then come back to India and see whether that only initially whether the thesis is relevant for the Indian context, right,
Yeah,
and if it is relevant, then who are the which are the companies which are working on those, right, then pick those companies and start doing angel investments.
correct.
So that's what I used to do. Very very interesting, right? So even understanding some thesis that was prevalent in the Chinese market but not prevalent in the US,
Yeah.
right? Maybe applicable in India, but something that was working in US but not working in China, but can work in.
Can you give us an example?
So let's say, for example, Chinese, right? China has this amazing micro payments companies, right? So if you really look at Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
right? Not many people are happy with the ending,
Yeah.
right? So let's say the producers of the show, right, run a crowdsourcing thing. What should be the ending,
Yeah.
right? So let's say they have two options, right? Either a great option where she becomes the queen, right? She doesn't die,
Yeah.
but another is what's the actual ending and stuff like that. And the crowd starts paying for what ending would they want to say,
Okay. Very cool.
right? And these are like cents, the payments, micro payments in cents. We don't have the micro payment culture,
Correct.
right? And let's say you have a novel, right, and you want to read only one chapter of that novel, right? Currently in India, we need to buy the book,
Yeah.
right? So there you may pay some 10 paces or 50 paces and stuff like that. You get only that chapter or only that page,
Correct.
right? And you only want to read about that only,
Yeah.
right? Those things are significantly prevalent in the Chinese context, but that has a extremely high volume.
Correct.
You have a scale because of which those micropayments makes a significant difference,
Correct.
right? In India, we have the scale, but we don't have the micropayments
Correct.
thesis
It's so
built in.
interesting. I thought sachetization in India was like a very standard thing.
No,
but
but
now
can you
that
buy a chapter in a book?
No, yeah, but that's what I realized. For
Right?
digital content,
Can you tell the author that I want a different ending?
correct.
Can you tell a movie director that this is not the right ending? We want so that is in some of the famous movies, right?
Yeah,
Right. I want a different ending.
yeah,
All right. So if you can do that and you start paying for it, then people will, the directors and the producers will do it.
Yeah.
Because currently in India, we are having multilingual, the same film in multiple languages.
correct,
The same singer singing the same song in multiple different languages and stuff like that. Why can't you have different endings?
correct. Interesting.
Right? The customers can easily pay. And you don't have to charge them like 1,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Ask them for 5 rupees, 10 rupees and stuff like that. The bulk of India would do that because they want the girl to get married to the guy.
Yeah,
Right? If they want Kajol to get on the train with Shah Rukh.
yeah,
Right? So they would do that. There are multiple, or they don't want Shah Rukh Khan to die in Kalo Na Ho.
yeah,
Right? So then people are ready to pay for all that, right? So stuff like that still doesn't exist in India, and I'm not really sure what would trigger that.
got it.
What would trigger that? And those are the things there, right? So then you'd come here and probably not invest in micropayments
Correct.
kind of startups and stuff like that, right? But you see EV thing happening big in the China, and you know that probably EV will be big in India.
Correct.
Right, so because we commute, we use a lot of two-wheelers similar to China and stuff like that. Then it's a bigger thing. Then you figure out which are the companies which are in the EV space, figure out who are the right set of founders, and then you start investing in.
Correct.
So that's the journey.
How did it go from there to picking this
right,
Zolve?
so again, two things there, right? So as I mentioned to you earlier, right, I used to play football and cricket, right, and when I was to play, I never was a 12th man.
Yeah. You're
And
always in the
always
team,
play,
always in the
play,
game.
play, play, right? And over a period of time, because I was doing all these angel investments and stuff like that, right? I started feeling that I become a 12th man in my own life. Because startups founders are running their own business and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I'm just sitting on the sidelines and observing.
Yeah.
It's like the 12th man, the 15th man in the World Cup finals also gets a part of the winning team only.
Yeah.
So I make the commercials, whatever the returns on the investments and stuff like that. But I haven't played a game.
Yeah.
Right, so that you would hit me. So I wanted to really start something. So during one such travel to the US, right, so a couple of my friends had just moved to the US because they wanted to list their company and things like that, right, millionaires.
Yeah.
And so they hosted me for dinner, right. And once the check came, typical India, right, if whoever is hosting typically pays,
Correct.
right. So when the check came, they took out cash to pay. And I was like surprised, why are you taking out cash to pay? Where is your card? They're like, we don't get credit cards. What do you mean by you don't get a credit card? Right? We don't have a credit history in the US, so we don't get a credit card. It's like, but you have an amazing history in India. Why can't you use it and get a credit card
Yeah.
here? So this is not how the system works. You can't use India stuff in the US. It's like, but you can use your education degrees, you can use a license. Why can't you use your credit score? No, this is not how the system works in the US. You will not get it. Like when an entrepreneur listens to this is how the system works, and the system is inefficient.
Yeah, and obviously wrong.
Right. So then I thought that night I felt that it maybe the Indians are treated that way. The Indian may not necessarily be.
Yeah.
Right. Next day I was meeting a startup which was from Portugal. Right. So they've been in the US for like 3 years. So at the end of our conversation, I generally asked them that, but what about your credit card and things like that? They also said that, they also don't get credit cards. So I was like, okay, interesting problem. Then every time I used to meet startups, right, I would ask them the question. The interesting thing was I was in the Valley. I was talking to an Israeli founder. So his startup Google had bought, right, and he'd become the VP products at Google. CTC was close to $1.5 million,
Yeah.
right? And I asked him, what about your credit card? He took out a Stanford Federal Credit Union card, $250 limit.
Seriously.
But the guy was on $1.5 million CTC and $250 limit. And I'm like, boss, this is insane. This is a big burning problem. Then I thought, is it only US? Then I met few guys from Canada, then UK, and came back to India, right? Realized that it's the same problem in any country to any country. The migrants are treated very, very
Very
differently, right? And if some Indians who are coming back from abroad to India after 5 years, no, their Indian credit history is also gone. I know of a guy who's a senior partner in a VC firm. He was Amex Platinum in the US. As soon as he came back to India, right, Amex didn't even give him a basic card also. All right, because the countries don't share credit card information, credit history information at all. So then that's when I realized that there is a great problem to be solved.
Yeah.
Right, because see, what I believe is people's behavior is going to be the same, right? So the way you behave in Delhi or Mumbai and Bangalore are similar.
Correct.
Just because instead of Bangalore you end up in New York, you're not going to change your behavior overnight, right? Credit worthiness of an individual is a reflection of their behavior, right? Location has nothing to do with that. Just because the banks in one country doesn't talk to banks in another country, there is an arbitrage, and that's the arbitrage that we want to use as an opportunity to build the business.
Got it. Let's talk about, like, you realize that this is a problem. How did you get your first, let's say, 1,000 customers? Like B2C, what was the pathway to get to that first 1,000 customers for you?
So interesting. So we started in COVID.
Okay.
21, right? 21. So when I did the research, there was no COVID.
Yeah.
All the research was done for people who are going to migrate to the US for work, which
Yeah.
is probably the larger segment, right? But in COVID, there no visas were issued.
Actually, very interesting. Migrate for work or migrate for education, which is the larger segment.
Work is the largest segment.
Oh, okay.
All the
I had
research-
always expected that education is the larger segment that people want to go out for.
Work is the largest segment. But during COVID, none of the people were allowed to travel to the US.
Correct.
Only students were allowed to travel. And because we had started the company, we didn't have a choice but to focus on students.
Correct.
So that's how it started. And students are probably a bit more easier to target because students go to the same test prep centers to prepare for SAT, GRE, and things like that.
Yeah.
And they seek help of counselors and consultants who place these students in the US universities.
Yeah.
Right, and they go to the same education loan providers, HDFC Credila, ICICI,
Yeah.
right, Empower, Prodigy, and stuff like that. So if you're going to tap into these sources, right, it's very easy for us to get the initial set of customers. And the thing about these students are they are extremely active on WhatsApp and Telegram groups and stuff like that. Right, people are going together to the same university. They have their own WhatsApp group.
WhatsApp
Right.
group, Facebook groups, all of
Right. So
that.
all Facebook forums and stuff like that. So once you get into that bit, right, it's very easy for us to start tapping into that.
Got it. So the distribution pathway was getting consultants, getting these groups, and then going
Yes.
from there. So from in the last 2.5 years, how has all evolved now? Like, is the user base still the India user base that you are targeting, or have you expanded to many other countries as well?
So we currently underwrite people from 61 different countries coming to the US.
Okay. So and now what does the future look like?
See, a few things on the business model. I think that will be. So we acquire customers in India just before they migrate,
Got it.
right? So all the CAC is in Indian rupees,
Correct.
right? And we give them a credit card to be used in the US,
Correct.
right? So whenever you swipe the credit card, right? So there is an MDR, which is the
Correct.
interchange, right? You make a share of the interchange,
Correct.
right? And if the people on the credit card revolve, right, you charge interest on that. That is
Correct.
also in US dollars. So all revenues are in US dollars. The cost is in Indian rupees.
Correct.
So because with the model is unit level profitable from day one itself, right? So that's one. And secondly, we focus on Indians moving to the US primarily, right? An average Indian household income in the US is $135,000. An average US household income in the US is $65,000.
Okay.
Why that is more important is majority of the people who are from India who are going to the US are super prime customers.
Yeah.
Or if you understand prime, subprime, super prime, right? So if you look at neobanks in the world, right, all of them are focused on subprime customers.
Can you tell the audience what's the difference between prime, subprime, and super prime?
Also, subprime people are probably the people who are at, let's say, per capita or below the per capita kinds.
Got it.
Prime users are probably the middle class and stuff like that. Super prime could be the upper middle class or
Got
the
it.
rich category, right? Not the right definition, but right, which is probably more understandable,
Got it.
right? And right, majority of these people, majority of the new banks started with unbanked folks,
Correct.
which are probably the lower middle class or probably the poor category and stuff
Correct.
like that, right? So you build it for them because the banks can't afford to put branches there and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
the new banks are completely digital, right? So you do that. Right, and that's how most of the neobanks in India are trying to do that, and in the US also, companies such as Chime and things like that focused on the subprime guys.
Correct.
The thing about subprime guys is don't have the wherewithal to pay for services. They don't have much money. So for you to really monetize
Yeah.
them, it's extremely hard.
It's the same problem that you were talking earlier. Here,
Exactly.
They don't have the money to pay.
Exactly. But Indians are super prime just because they don't have a credit history, right? So the banks in the US don't touch them.
Correct.
All right, and we start touching them. Right, and we build a great business that way.
Yeah, it's
right?
a very
So,
interesting arbitrage that
exactly.
you've
Super prime
identified.
users, right? Indian CAC USD revenue, and because we give them here, we become the primary card also for them.
Correct.
Right, and for a longer duration, people just don't leave us and go because there is no other options for them.
Correct.
So that's how we went about building the business there.
For the forthcoming years, do you think this is going to the primary business model? What are some interesting things
So
that
what we did was we
other opportunities you've
started with the
identified?
credit card, right, and then we started providing the bank account also. We realized that these migrants do a lot of remittances
Correct.
between India, US, India, and other things also, right? So what we did was, and we would have done we have done the KYC for the customer both on the India side and the US side,
Correct.
right? So because of which every time they want to do a remittances, right, they don't have to do KYC again.
Correct.
Right, so because of which remittances on the platform looks like an internal fund transfer.
Yeah.
Right, drop down your US account, drop down Indian account, just wire the money.
Yeah.
Right, and we it's powered with Wise, so we get 100 bips lower compared to the Wise's retail rate.
Correct.
We pass on 50 bips to the customer, we keep 50 bips.
Correct.
Right, so it's cheaper than the transfer Wise.
Correct.
That they use and stuff like that. It's cheaper, a lot more convenient,
and efficient also.
Right, so immediately the money comes to their account, right, that way. And insurance is also something that it's mandatory for people who are going to the US need to take. Correct. Right, and majority of the people don't know who are the insurance providers also.
So you're building basically the entire financial services stack.
Exactly, financial, and these people need that, and they're ready to pay for that.
Correct. And
right.
As you said, they are super prime, right? So
exactly.
they're willing to pay for that convenience.
We kind of, so to the point that you were trying to make, right? We become the distribution channel, right? So we are kind of a distribution, not just for financial services also. For example, so AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon in the US approached us because the new SIM card sales is primarily to the migrants than for the local American population. Correct. Because the local American population is saturated with SIM cards.
Yeah.
The new SIM card sales happens to the migrants, and we hold the key to those migrants. Right, and they leave what they sell on a retail on the shelf price, right? We get significant, like 40% of the cost.
Yeah.
And
it's better for the customer, better for you.
Exactly.
And all those value-added services just continue to help.
So we kind of become the great distribution hub. So the entire idea is people come to us for the credit, but they stay with us for the platform. The platform also has all these services.
Got it.
That's what we are trying to build.
Cool. So let's now jump back to the 2015 to 20 period. What was it like after your exit? Did you consciously choose to not work? Did you think that you wanted to do angel investments? And of course, you've been athlete before. Was the pursuit to go back to all of that?
So I think after the exit of TaxiForSure, I think the biggest thing that got unlocked, right, beyond money and things like that, right, it was the time.
Correct.
Right. So I had a lot of time at my hand and stuff like that, right? Easy to probably jump into another startup and start building and things like that, right? So, but while running TaxiForSure, right? So I spent a whole lot of time doing day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
All right. So then I thought that if I jump into that, I'll be doing it. Right. So then I realized that there are a lot of other startups who are talking to you because you're an entrepreneur and you got an exit also, and most of the people who are starting up want to learn from you and things like that, right? So that was there. But beyond that, right, the entire concept of angel investment started because when we started building TaxiForSure, a whole lot of people helped us out.
Correct.
Right. And after the exit, we can't go back and help those people who helped us.
Correct.
The only thing that we could do is to pay it forward.
Correct.
Right. So help other entrepreneurs who are trying to build, right? So whatever the challenge that you went through, whatever the problems that you went through and stuff like that, you from your learning, right, you help them out. So that it was more of a pay it forward thing than really an angel investment for returns and stuff like that, right? And why put your money is you need to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
So one is to support them, telling them you're doing great work and stuff like that, but I'll not put my money.
Yeah, that would work.
Exactly, right? So if you feel that the idea is good and these are the right set of people doing it, right? You need to put your money where your mouth is. Yeah. So majority, almost all the investments that I've done is mostly for paid forward to put my money where my mouth is than really looking at
the investment opportunity,
right, as a return on investment and stuff like that, right? And that's one. And also I realized that so if these many entrepreneurs are coming to me and right, I'm spending so much of time with those guys and getting into their brainstorming sessions, discussing their strategy and things like that, right? Now I can be part of multiple journeys all at once.
Correct.
Right, than be completely bothered by the day-to-day execution. So you work with those guys and stuff like that. I felt that I'm been part of several growing startups at the same time. It's a great place to be in. Yeah. Right. Than be part of a single startup and spend significant amount of time on day-to-day operations. Right. There is not much value add, but it takes a success out of thing. Right. Yeah. Here, so I was completely relieved from that. And other important thing was. Investor would treat me as a fellow investor because I put my money. Yeah. An entrepreneur would treat me as a fellow entrepreneur because I built a company and stuff, right? So I kind of started occupying a very unique place in the ecosystem. Right, I'm close friends to the investor also, close friend to the entrepreneur also. So I would probably deal with a miscommunication between the two parties very effectively, right? And I didn't want to let go of that and become a VC partner and stuff like that. Yeah. Right. So here I was engaged in. So I was intellectually engaged, mentally engaged and stuff like that, and been part of multiple startups at the same time. Correct. Right. It was good, and both the investor and the entrepreneur were also friends. So I didn't want to let go of that. So
let's talk about one journey that you were a part of where you think where eventually it did not work out then, but do you think it was just wrong timing or it was just too early? Anything like that comes to your mind?
A lot of them actually.
Okay, so let's talk about one example.
A lot of them. I think so. There are a few startups which I thought was probably way too early. Okay. Right. I think 2015 I invested in a EV company. Right. That didn't go anywhere. Yeah, actually, right, and thankfully the startup survived for such a long time, but now they are making a lot more sense. Got it. Right. Got it. And there were companies which I felt that they're going to do some kick-ass work and stuff like that, right? And they were doing kick-ass work, and COVID happened, and that's been curtains for them and stuff like that. And there are companies which I would felt that the founder is good and stuff like that, but the idea doesn't have any merit. All right, but let's start engaging with the founder, let's see. And that probably is one of the best performing portfolios in my thing, on the same idea. Right, so then I realized that I have no idea how to go about investing and stuff like that. So there is an extremely interesting thing about angel investment, right? When you invest, right? You typically invest in, you understand the theory, right? You invest in, let's say, 10 companies.
Power
one or,
law theory.
right? 1 or 2 companies will be super successful.
Correct.
And stuff like that. You know all this theory and
Yeah.
stuff like that, right? But when you start doing angel investment, no, the thing that one is not prepared for is your failures come first.
Yeah.
Your successes comes much
Much
later.
later.
Right? And
Interesting.
you have to keep doing the angel investment, right, every year, because not all good companies come in the same year.
Correct.
Right? You keep on doing it, and you know that your failures are coming. Even that year also, you still have to invest in startups, because you know that you never know which one will be super successful.
Correct. So you have to spread that across time.
Right? You have to spread. You need to have that thing telling that it's very easy to tell that, boss, मैं नहीं करूँगा, बस हो गया, बस तो सब whatever wherever I invest in, everything is tanking only. Right? So it's better not to invest only, so that at least whatever money you have made, at least it still remains, instead of just losing it and stuff like that. So that was one of the learning. But because it was more for paid forward and stuff like that, it was not really. So I've seen a lot of guys who probably were in the real estate business who figured out that, oh, a lot of things are happening in startup, and let me start investing in startup. So they start investing. They start seeing the failures earlier. Obviously, right? The failures comes first.
Yeah.
The success comes 5 years, 6 years down the line.
Correct.
Failures will happen in the first 1 or 2 years only. Right? As soon as they see some failures, right, they stop.
Yeah.
Because I was doing it mostly for the pay it forward, right? I continued. Now I get to see that, all the returns are now the ROI on the investment that we were making is coming through and stuff like that. So that was one tough learning, because there were quite a few of my friends who were in different businesses, working in some large companies, right, in India and in the US, who wanted to get into startups. They started coming and investing, but they couldn't really survive the initial onslaught of the failed companies that they've invested in.
Great. So that's about angel investing. Let's also talk about endurance. You spent, as you said, while we were chatting some time back, that there were 2 things that you were doing in that period: angel investing and running. So how did you get into that again, and why so?
Oh, so the thing is, it's all you're always in a pursuit of something.
Yeah.
Correct. Either you need to be better than what you were and things like that, right? And you want to learn something that you haven't really tried it in the past and stuff like that, right? So I was 32 when we got the TFS exit. So the biggest thing got unlocked was time. And you're young also. So the only thing that you can possibly do then is to push your physical limits.
Correct.
Right? What best to do that, right? Either climb mountains or do triathlons, right? So I was doing marathons anyways before that, right? The one thing that I didn't know was how to swim. Right, I joined a swimming class. 2 months I didn't get into the water because I was too scared. The only way for me to deal with that fear is to register for something big.
Yeah.
Then getting into the water looks very, very easy. But if the only thing that you want to do is to get into the water, right, that is too scary. So I registered for a full Ironman, which is like a 4-kilometer swim.
Yeah.
Then getting into the water became a lot more easy, because the 4-kilometer swimming was much more daunting than just getting into the water. So learned swimming, started taking part in triathlons and stuff like that.
So, and how many such triathlons would you have taken part in?
Right, maybe more than 20 plus, I think.
What continues to drive you towards doing that still? Like it's
just pushing, right? So I think when running a startup also, right, you push yourself emotionally, mentally, physically also at times, right? You go through so much of ups and downs, right? Sometimes you want to give up and stuff like that, right? But the only thing that you need to typically do is there should be some good memory of yours where you when you want to give up, but you still pursue. Right, and you cross over the finish line, right? So when it comes to endurance sports, right, the finish line is what do you call? It's real. When you're running a startup and stuff like that, the finish line is not real. I mean, it's very difficult to know which is the right finish line. At least in endurance sports, you have a definite finish line. So you go through this and stuff like that. The body goes through a whole lot of challenges and things like that, right? But despite all that, you cross. And when you're going through some things, right, while building your startup or your personal life and stuff like that, right? Because you have pushed yourself to that level, and that memory is good enough for you to deal with whatever that you are going through now.
Correct.
Because you've done that in the past. You felt like, I mean, I vomited on the course because I pushed my physical limit so much, right? I felt that I cannot even walk. I have to start crawling, right? I've bled on the course also because I fallen down from my bike. All right. So you've gone through all that, but you cross the finish line. Right. When you see those days when you pushed yourself and stuff like that, right? Everything else looks small.
Correct.
Right?
Changes the game.
Right. Having those memories is extremely important. You must have seen a Harry Potter movies, right? So it's not about somebody, right, just right, waves the wand and uses the words, right? It's about, right, for the thing to be powerful, you need to have a very strong memory attached to it.
Correct.
Right. Then only that thing will be powerful, right?
Yeah.
So for you also, you need to have those kind of memories, because whenever you're going through tough times, right, you need to have that memory to bounce you back.
And just be able to take you ahead.
Right. And so the whole pursuit is to create those memories. Whether it will come in handy or not, you never know.
Correct.
But when you need it, you can't create those.
Correct.
It's always better to have a kitty of such kind of memories, right? So good things, bad things, challenging things, where you pushed yourself and stuff like that, right? So that when you can, when you want to dig deep,
you can anchor
you
to
have those things to dig deep, because you've done so many things in your life that anything later will be a smaller thing.
Very, very interesting. So let's now talk about your personal investments. Where do you invest today? How do you think of investments and wealth and money as such?
So it's interesting, right? So for we'll probably let's talk about the net worth, right?
Yeah.
So in the net worth, so what I've done is I've divided the net worth into 4 different buckets. All right. So one is liquidity, or for whatever the day-to-day needs and things like that. Second one will be the debt piece. All right. So we invest in debt-related investments.
Correct.
Third one is the equity, where you invest in the markets, mutual funds, AIFs,
Correct.
right, structured products and stuff like that. The fourth thing would be your startup investments, which are high risky and
Correct.
stuff like that. The fifth thing that you can talk about is immovable properties, real estate and things
Yeah.
like that. So that's how you typically
Spread it
structure
across.
it, right? And because the startup investment is extremely risky, right, you don't expose more than 5 to 10% of your net worth
Correct.
into the startup investments, right?
Correct.
So because rest of the things will give you some distribution and stuff like that, right?
Correct.
So you go start investing in the startup ecosystem. In the startup thing, because I've built B2C companies and stuff like that, personal preference is B2C, because I do understand the business and stuff like that. But I have few exposure towards SaaS companies and enterprise companies, because I knew the founders really, really well.
Yeah.
I don't understand the business, but I understand those founders and things like that, right? Company building, there's much more than just the customers, right? There's a cultural element of it, there's a hiring element of it, there's managing investors, raising capital, strategy and stuff like that, right? So those are the places that I can typically help. So as I mentioned earlier, right, so for me, investment is not for ROI. I just want to have a relationship with the founder, right? So I would prefer to be there 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. friend.
Yeah.
Where if they're going through tough times, they just pick up the phone and call and stuff like that, right? And because I have a portfolio, earlier I would do it myself. Because I have a portfolio, if somebody calls me now, I know that another founder just a year back was going through the same problem.
Yeah.
So I put both of them in touch with each other. And because it's founder to founder conversation, right? That founder is a lot more open in sharing, oh, I was going through this and stuff like that, right? So then it's a lot more. So I don't have to really solve problems. I just have to put these people in touch with each other and stuff like that. It becomes a lot more easy, right? And the thing is, you don't have to really solve any problems per se, right? For I don't know, for some strange reason, people know how to figure out the solution for the problems that they're facing, right? The thing is, they are not thinking about the solution. They just worry about the problem itself. Why me? Instead of trying to, okay, there is a problem and let me solve it, right? But for some strange reason, people take a lot of comfort when they realize that there are other people also in the same boat.
Yeah.
Nobody has come and solved. Oh, that person was on the same problem, was also facing the same problem.
Suddenly makes that
right?
much more
Then this is not really a big problem. Like, I can only figure out. So nobody's asking you to solve their problems.
Yeah.
You just have to tell them that you're not the only one who's facing the problem. A lot of us also face the same problem. We are on the same boat. That sense of being in the same boat gives so much of relief to those founders, to those individuals, right? They will figure out a way to solve the problems themselves.
Got it.
It's a if you really look at it, it's a very simple thing that we do.
Got it. So 5-10% is in risky bucket, which is, let's say, startup equity for you. What about the rest? Where does the rest go?
That's what liquidity, debt related investments.
Rough percentage if you want to share.
So depending on your risk profile and stuff like that, right? So around 30 to 40% in the debt, around 30 to 40% on the equity side.
Yeah. And the rest is around liquid and illiquid stuff.
Yes, typically.
Cool, great.
So because so I'm still young, so I can stay in the market for extremely long duration and stuff like that, right? And typical ups and downs in the stock market doesn't really panic me.
Yeah, not anymore, I'm assuming.
No, it never panicked me early. I mean, so we started TaxiForSure in 2010 when we didn't know that startup founders can make crazy amount of money. So money was never the motivation.
Yeah.
Right, for us to really go and start a company, to sell the company so that you make money and stuff like that. So it wasn't a motivation then when we didn't have it. It's not really a motivation now also.
Correct. We'll move towards now talking about just some quick rapid fire things, right? So let's first talk about a book that you would have gifted to most people, or a book that you really liked in life.
So the quite a few books. I've been gifting books since 2011 onwards during Diwali to all my staff, right?
Yeah.
So we did with some of our investors also, investor portfolio companies as well, right? The thing that I usually gift is depending on whether the person reads or not reads. If somebody who doesn't read, right? Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Yeah.
Is an amazing book, Richard Bach, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that I gave it. For some of the startup founders, right? Hard things about hard things,
Yeah.
right?
Legendary.
Right. So that's the thing, right? For some people who are dabbling about working startups and stuff like that, right? They don't know their visibility in the career path and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Range is a great book
Yeah.
for those guys, right? And for marketing folks, it's predictably rational.
Yeah.
Right, so there is a whole suite of books that I have that I
For
give
this
to
purpose, this
right. So
purpose.
what should be the and because I'm doing it year on year.
Yeah.
So it's not that. So let's say if I know you, it's not that I can give you one book today, but I can't give the same book tomorrow for you.
Correct.
Right, the next year and stuff like that.
Correct.
But I know the people that I get involved. Right, what are the things that they're doing? What are the things that are bothering them and stuff like that? Right? What is the potential that I see in them? Based on that, I start sharing
Correct.
the kind of books and stuff like that.
Got it. One recent habit that you've picked up that has meaningfully changed your life.
Oh, I started spending a whole lot of time with family and friends.
Okay.
Right. Earlier, I would be more busy, more occupied. I read a lot also, and I do the endurance sports as well, right?
Yeah.
So most of the time, I've been alone,
Yeah.
right? Off late, I started spending more time with family
Okay.
because I think my kids are now 11 and 7. They can hold a conversation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. Earlier, I would invest time to do that. Now it's more like a peer level conversation and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And socially also, I started spending more time with friends.
Correct.
All right. So that also significantly helped.
But then how does, traveling so much across US and India, how are you able to get time for this?
Most of the books that I read are in the flight.
Okay.
All right, I get a lot more time in the flight, right? So I don't take the
Wi-Fi.
aeroplane Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So it gives me a lot of time over there.
Yeah.
Right, and most of the things that I do. So whenever I travel, I think that I pick up doing a lot more endurance activities.
Yeah.
Right, so that right, I don't really have. But when I'm back here,
It's all family.
oh, it's all family and friends.
Got
Right, so and when I was here throughout the year. Right, family, it's always there.
Exactly.
Friends are always there and stuff like that. But now because I travel a lot more, so when I come back, I now make it a point that I spend more time
Got
with
it.
these guys.
Got it. One purchase that you would have done of, let's say, maximum 10,000 that has impacted significantly?
Books, man.
All books.
Books. Primarily, it's books.
Books.
Right. It's been that way only. Nothing apart from that.
Great. And let's say if you could rent a billboard on Silkboard, what would you want to write on that for the rest of the world to see?
Take risks.
Interesting. Take risk.
Take
How do you
risk.
think about risk?
I mean, just get out of your comfort zone. Just get out of your comfort zone. I mean, I think the worst thing that we can do to ourselves is not getting out of our comfort zone. And then if you really look back at it, right, whether it's TaxiForSure, Zolve and stuff like that, no, I was being academically very good. Right, throughout my life and stuff like that. Right, so I just went to places where I went to and stuff like that. Right, where I had to and where everybody
Yeah.
thought that I should be there and stuff like that. Right, but and I thought that I was good in whatever that I used to do and stuff like that. Right.
Yeah.
So once I started Taxi for Sure, right, I realized few things about myself that I never realized throughout my life. Good things and bad things,
Yeah.
right? And there are times when I felt that during those times, even though I was looking for recognition from outside world, right, I never felt that I should pat my own back.
Yeah.
But in the entire taxi for Sure journey, right, so there are so many instances where I genuinely felt that I should pat my own back because of what I've been able to do, right? Throughout my career, I never felt that way at all,
Yeah.
right? And there are some places where I felt that I'm a jackass.
Yeah.
Right? In my entire work experience, nobody made me feel like a jackass. I also never felt like a jackass and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But here it will. So I think, right, being an entrepreneur is a journey towards self-discovery.
Yeah.
Right? And I know that a lot of my friends, extremely good friends, they're probably a lot more capable than I am. Right? Probably would go through their entire life without experiencing what I've experienced.
Just because they don't take risks.
They just because they don't want to get out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Right, and that is probably the worst thing that we do to ourselves.
Got it.
Right, so I mean, just go discover. I'm not asking people to become entrepreneurs and stuff like that. Just get out of your comfort zone. Take risks.
Got it.
Right, and yeah, and there is a lot that if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, also it's great. There's a significant amount of learning, and it's all about self-discovery, right? If you learn more about yourself, that's great.
Correct. And what, let's say, a founder who is just starting up, one advice that you think will that they should stick around to or have it at their heart so that they can do their job well.
Figure out a way to say no.
Any examples with this?
Well, people just say it. People can't say no to investors, can't say no to customers, can't say no to teammates, right? Can't say no to anybody, right? And because of it, they try to appease everybody, and they just go
doesn't work for
nowhere,
anyone.
right? And because you just can't say no, you end up in a place where you don't want to be,
Correct.
and everybody will blame you because you got everybody there.
Yeah.
Right, so learning that thing about ability to say no, ability to let go of things, it's extremely critical to the founders, because we are see what wherever you put and somewhere will figure out. If you don't know marketing, you'll figure out marketing. If you're not comfortable talking to customers, you will figure out a way to talk to customers. If you're not good at raising capital, you will figure out a way to raise capital and stuff like that, right? You will figure out everything. Ability to say no is extremely hard. Nobody tells you to say no.
Got it.
Nobody wants to hear a no, so nobody will tell you to say no.
Yeah.
All right, so it's very difficult. Very difficult. You can't let go of fire a person even though you feel that it is fine, because the person has amazing credentials and you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, you have to. Everybody says that you have to listen to customers, so you have to listen to customers. And investors have invested in several companies which have become big, so they know how to build a business. This is my first business.
Yeah.
Right? They are like God's greatest gift to mankind, so they know how to build large startups. So let me listen to them. Or if they're saying something, even though it doesn't gel well with whatever I think it is, right? But I can't say no to them. Correct. They know better. Everybody knows better. But apparently, it's only the founder who knows best.
Yeah.
All right. So learning that is extremely important.
Great. So take risks and learn to say no. Any parting words, Raghu, for everyone today? Anything that you would want to add?
Nothing much, but I think we covered significant. You've been a great host. All right. You got
love this conversation.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Thanks a lot for being here, Raghu. And hopefully we'll see you again at some point.
Thank you, man. Thanks.